My name is Naomi Harlow, and I'm 36 years old. If you'd asked me 2 months ago how my life was going, I would have said something like, "We're just in a rough patch." That's what I called it to my coworkers over coffee, to my mom on Sunday calls, even to myself when I couldn't sleep. A rough patch, something you ride out with patience, adult conversations, and maybe a weekend away with mood lighting and cheap hotel wine. I didn't realize that what I was calling a rough patch was actually the part where the road had already disappeared, and I was still pressing the gas, pretending we weren't in free fall. I'd been with my boyfriend Grant for 4 years. We met at a friend's wedding, the classic open bar and bad DJ situation. He was the charming guy at the table who somehow made a long speech about pharmaceutical sales sound like a TED Talk about changing lives. He sold medication, made a good commission, liked the way his job title landed in conversations. It's about impact, he'd tell people, but I'd seen the way his eyes lit up more at the bonus checks than at the patient outcomes. I was a senior software engineer at a mid-sized tech company. Good salary, good benefits, stable team. Nothing glamorous. No one was making a prestige drama about my day-to-day debugging. Still, I liked my work. I was respected. I had a say in architecture decisions. I wasn't some rock star founder, but I slept fine at night. 18 months after we started dating, we moved in together. A 2-bedroom apartment with thin walls and a view of a parking lot. We joked about it being our starter life. The slow unraveling started in January. At first, the criticism came in little comments. "Naomi, you could be making so much more if you pushed yourself." Or, "Do you ever think about where you want to be in 5 years, really?" Then it was my schedule. You leave at 5 like it's a punch clock job. No late nights, no extra effort. Every conversation started to feel like I was in a one-person performance review where the manager had already decided I was underperforming. I tried to explain it. "I'm not coasting, Grant. I'm actually happy. The role is stable. I'm being considered for a promotion, and I'm interviewing around to see what's out there." He'd nod, but his expression said he didn't believe a word of it. Or worse, that it didn't count unless it looked big enough on paper. By February, the tension followed us everywhere. In the kitchen as we meal prepped, in the car on the way to brunch, in bed when we turned out the lights and lay in separate little islands of silence. Then came Valentine's Day. I booked a nice restaurant weeks in advance. White tablecloths, soft lighting, the kind of place where the menu doesn't have prices, just vibes. I wore a red dress that he'd once said he loved. For the first 20 minutes, things were almost normal. We ordered champagne. We laughed about our friend's upcoming baby shower. I started to think, maybe this is our reset. Then he picked up his phone, checked something on Instagram, and smiled. "What?" I asked. "Oh, nothing. Just saw that my coworker closed on a house." He set his phone down. "He's only 32, already has property. Smart move, you know, building equity." I smiled politely. "Good for him." Grant leaned forward. "We should be thinking about that too, Naomi. We're not kids." "We've talked about this," I said, keeping my voice even. "I'm waiting to see how things go with my job situation before we make a huge financial commitment." He set his fork down a little too loudly. "That's the problem. You're always waiting, always being cautious. Meanwhile, everyone around us is moving forward." The words stung more than I wanted to admit. "I'm not being cautious for no reason," I said. "I'm being strategic. I am being considered for a promotion. I'm interviewing. I'm just not broadcasting every step." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "Naomi, everyone says they're being strategic when they're scared to take a risk." The rest of the meal happened in a kind of muffled slow motion. We ate in near silence. I watched the bill arrive, an amount I'd saved specifically for this night, and felt a dull ache in my chest that had nothing to do with money. On the drive home, the only sounds were the turn signal and the low hum of the engine. I told myself it was just a bad date, that couples had those, that we'd talk it out. Instead, we went to bed on opposite sides and let the resentment harden. The real break in the road came on March 1st. The layoff wasn't a surprise. The company had been telegraphing it for months. Budget freezes, vague town halls, a revolving door of upper management. When my manager scheduled a quick chat on a Friday afternoon, I knew what it was before I sat down. They cut 20% of staff. My name was on the list. There was a script about appreciating my contributions, a severance package, an offer to connect me with recruiters. I'd already been interviewing quietly for 3 months, including a final round scheduled the following week with a major tech company that would triple my current salary. As I left the building with my cardboard box of half-dead desk plants and worn notebooks, I didn't feel panic so much as a weird, hollow calm. Okay, I thought. This is the moment you've been preparing for. Grant was working from home that day. When I walked into the apartment around 3, he was in the bedroom on a video call. I sat on the couch, clutching the envelope with my severance paperwork, and waited. At 3:45, he emerged, loosening his tie. Hey, you're home early. I took a breath. I got laid off. His face went through a slideshow of expressions. Shock, concern, and then something else, something colder. What happened? Company-wide cuts, I said. They let go of 20%. I've seen it coming for a while. That's why I've been interviewing. He crossed his arms. Interviewing? Yes. I have a final round next week with a big tech company. The pay is significantly higher than what I made here. I've been positioning for this for months. He stared at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. When were you going to tell me you were interviewing? I'm telling you now. I've mentioned I was being strategic about my job. Yeah, you said that, he replied. You didn't say you were actively looking to leave. I literally told you on Valentine's Day that I was waiting to see how the job situation played out. This is what I meant. He shook his head, jaw tight. You should have been honest with me. We're supposed to be building a future together, Naomi. I can't build a future with someone who has no ambition and just shrugs when she gets laid off. The words landed like a slap. I'm not shrugging, I said quietly. I'm prepared. There's a difference. He didn't answer. He just walked back into the bedroom and closed the door. That night, he made his own dinner and ate in there. I ate cold leftovers over the sink, staring at the spot on the floor where his shoes usually sat. I stayed up late, laptop open, reviewing technical questions and architecture diagrams for the upcoming interview. Every time my stomach tightened in fear, I thought of his voice saying, "No ambition," and felt the fear turn into something sharper. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of drawers opening. I found him in the bedroom, dressed, tossing clothes into a duffel bag. What are you doing? I asked. I'm staying at Trevor's for a few days, he said without looking at me. Why? He paused, then met my eyes. Because I need space to think about whether I can build a future with someone who just got laid off and acts like it's no big deal. I told you I've been interviewing. I have a serious opportunity lined up. Talk is cheap, Naomi, he cut in. Everyone says they're going to do something. Actually doing it is different. He zipped the bag. So that's it? I asked. You're leaving because my life didn't go according to your timeline? I'm leaving, he said, because I want a partner who's hungry, who's going places. Right now, that's not you. He walked past me, duffel over his shoulder. The front door closed with a soft click that sounded to me like a verdict. For a long time, I just stood there, staring at the empty space he'd walked through, the silence ringing in my ears. Then I went back to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, pulled up the interview prep document I'd been building for weeks, and whispered to myself, okay, let's see how no ambition does in a final round. And this time, I wasn't doing it for him. I was doing it for the version of me he had never bothered to see. The morning after Grant walked out, the apartment felt too quiet, like the walls were waiting for me to admit something to them. But I didn't have time for heartbreak or self-analysis. I had 4 days until the biggest interview of my career. So I made a plan. Not the kind of plan you brag about on social media, the quiet, unglamorous kind. Timed study blocks, review sessions, mock system design questions. I rewrote architecture diagrams on printer paper until my fingers cramped. I recorded myself explaining distributed systems and replayed the audio while I cooked. I practiced telling the story of every major project I'd ever led, mistakes included, until I could narrate them in my sleep. The apartment became a war room, and I became a woman defending her future. Grant didn't text, didn't call, didn't check in. I told myself it didn't matter. Some hours, I even believed it. By March 5th, I felt as ready as a human being could be. I wore a navy blazer, tied my hair back, and stared at myself in the mirror for a long beat before whispering, "You've earned this." The office building for the tech company towered over the city like it had something to prove. Security badges, glass elevators, polished floors. The place looked like ambition had been poured into the walls and crystallized. The moment I met the VP of engineering, I knew I was in the right room. He shook my hand warmly. "Naomi, I've heard excellent things." "I hope to live up to them," I said, though inside I felt the familiar tight coil of pressure. Except as we started talking, something shifted. He wasn't interrogating me. He was listening. Actually listening. We went deep into the technical challenges they were facing. He wanted to understand how I made decisions, not whether I'd memorized the right answers. We debated architecture choices. We sketched alternative solutions on a whiteboard wall. At one point, he laughed and said, "I can tell you've been thinking about these problems for years." 2 hours passed in what felt like 20 minutes. When we wrapped, he didn't stand immediately. He tilted his head, studying me with the kind of thoughtful curiosity that felt nothing like the cold evaluation I'd learned to brace for. "Naomi," he said, "this role requires leadership, clear vision, the ability to make hard calls. You have all of that. I'll have HR send an official offer by the end of the week, but—" He extended his hand again, smiling. "Welcome aboard." My breath caught. "Thank you," I managed, shaking his hand. "Really, thank you." As I walked out of the building, sunlight reflecting off the windows nearly blinded me, or maybe that was the feeling swelling in my chest. A mix of relief, pride, and something like vindication, but without the bitterness. I didn't need Grant to know about this moment. This one belonged entirely to me. The official offer arrived on March 8th, an email with numbers that felt unreal. Salary, triple my old one. Equity, generous. Start date, April 1st. I signed it before finishing the email. The apartment was quiet. No cheers. No, "I'm so proud of you." No arms wrapping around me. Just the clicking of keys and the hum of the refrigerator. Still, I smiled. The next day, March 9th, I was working on a personal project when the front door opened. Grant walked in. He didn't look angry. He looked calm, almost rehearsed. "We need to talk," he said. I closed my laptop slowly. "Okay." He sat across from me, posture straight, hands clasped like he was about to deliver feedback in a meeting. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said, "about us, about the future, about what I need." That phrasing, "what I need," was something I'd heard too often. "And?" I asked. "And I don't think this is working anymore," he said, exhaling. "I need someone who's on the same trajectory, someone who's hungry, ambitious, not content with just coasting. I don't think we're aligned." I stared at him, stunned, not by the breakup, but by the sense of déjà vu. He wasn't ending things because he knew the truth. He was ending them because he believed something about me, something false, and he preferred the story in his head. "I see," I said softly. He shifted, clearly expecting a reaction. Tears, pleading, shock, something. But all I felt was a strange, gentle separation from the moment, like watching a movie I already knew the ending to. "That's it?" he said, frowning. "You're not going to fight for this?" "You just told me you can't build a future with me," I replied. "What would I be fighting for?" He blinked, thrown off. "I thought you'd, I don't know, try to change my mind." "Why?" I asked. "Your mind seems made up." He held my gaze for a second, waiting for a crack in my composure. When none came, he looked away. The packing took 3 hours. We discussed who owned what. Our blender, my books, his TV. No tears, no grand speeches, not even anger. Just the sense that something had already died weeks before. When he carried the last box to his car, he paused. "I hope you figure things out," he said. A part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to cry. Instead, I simply nodded. "Thanks," I said. "You too." He drove away. I stood on the sidewalk for a moment, watching the taillights disappear around the corner. Then I went back inside, refreshed my email, saw the signed job offer sitting in my sent folder, and let out a long, slow breath. Not relief, not pride, something quieter. Certainty. I wasn't going to prove him wrong. I wasn't going to prove anything to anyone. I was building a future, with or without the people who believed I had one. The 2 weeks after the breakup passed in a kind of deliberate quiet. No dramatic crying on the bathroom floor, no rage texting my friends. Just silence, work, and the kind of stillness that feels like a reset button you didn't know you needed. I reorganized the apartment, moved the couch, bought new plants, threw away the coffee mugs Grant always complained I had too many of. I worked on freelance projects. I cleaned out old email folders. I slept. And on April 1st, I started my new job. If my old office felt like a high school group project, this place felt like NASA. Glass walls, collaborative spaces, teams buzzing with ideas. A sense of momentum so strong it was almost a smell in the air, fresh, charged, like static before a storm. My new manager, a sharp but warm woman named Erin, greeted me with a firm handshake. "We're excited to have you, Naomi. Big things ahead." Big things. The words hit somewhere deep. She introduced me to everyone. Engineers, designers, product managers, even the CTO for a brief moment. During lunch, she walked me through the initiatives I'd be leading. Distributed infrastructure redesign, new cross-team architecture guidelines, a multi-quarter roadmap with my name stamped all over it. I felt like someone had finally opened a door I'd been knocking on for years. By the end of the week, the company posted its standard new hire announcement on LinkedIn. Please welcome Naomi Harlow, Principal Software Engineer. A polished company photo. A short bio about my experience. A line about the critical platform initiatives I'd be leading. I shared it with a simple caption. Excited to start this new chapter. Nothing poetic, just truth. I closed my laptop, made dinner, watched a show, went to bed. The next morning, my phone was buzzing so aggressively it fell off the nightstand. Notifications, connection requests, recruiter messages, old colleagues congratulating me. And then, a text from Grant. Saw your LinkedIn. Congrats on the new position. I stared at it for a full minute, motionless. The same man who told me I had no ambition. The same man who walked out because he thought I wasn't hungry enough. Now texting from the sidelines of his own assumptions. I didn't respond. 20 minutes later, another text appeared. That's a really impressive company. I didn't know you were interviewing with them. Still nothing. An hour later, maybe we grew apart too fast. Would be good to catch up sometime. That one made me laugh. Actually laugh. Grew apart too fast. As though he hadn't packed his bags while I stood in the doorway explaining my plans he didn't want to believe in. I typed out a reply slowly, choosing each word like it mattered. Because it did. We didn't grow apart, Grant. You left because you assumed I had no ambition, no future. I already had this job offer when you packed your things. I just didn't see the point in telling someone who'd already decided who I was. Good luck with everything. I reread it twice. It wasn't angry. It wasn't bitter. It was simply finished. I hit send. Then I blocked his number. Blocked him on LinkedIn. Blocked him on everything I could think of. Not out of spite, out of necessity. I wasn't going to let someone show up only when the outcome was shiny. Of course, life never ends conversations cleanly. Mutual friends started texting within days. First, hey, Grant reached out to me. He said he really regrets how things went. Maybe talk to him? Then another. He's been beating himself up. He didn't know you had a big opportunity lined up. I typed a simple reply. He didn't need to know about the job to treat me with basic respect. Please don't pass along any more messages. Most friends understood. One didn't. A friend named Melissa, who'd introduced us years ago, called me directly. Naomi, he's really torn up about this. I think he panicked. He thought you weren't motivated. But I told him I was interviewing, I said. He just didn't believe me. Still, he feels horrible. Can't you at least hear him out? Why? I asked calmly. So he can apologize now that he knows my title and salary? There was a long silence. I guess that does look bad, she finally admitted. It's not about looking bad. It's about showing someone who you are when things get hard. He walked away while I was still mid-stride. Melissa exhaled into the phone. Okay, I'll stop pushing. I appreciated that. Truly. Because the truth was settling into me like a new foundation. I didn't need closure from Grant. I didn't need validation. I didn't need him to understand what he'd missed. I just needed distance. By the end of April, I wasn't thinking about him anymore. I was too busy. Designing architecture proposals, leading meetings, earning trust, belonging in rooms I used to dream about. I'd wake up with energy. I'd fall asleep with purpose. I'd spend entire days without once remembering the man who told me I wasn't ambitious enough. Until early May. Because that was the night I saw him again. Unplanned, unavoidable, and with a look in his eyes I immediately recognized. Regret dressed as realization. But that moment belongs to later. For now, I was finally breathing freely. Finally steering my life without someone turning the wheel from the passenger seat. And I wasn't planning, under any circumstances, to hand the keys back. By early May, my life felt fuller than it had in years. Work was intense, it's the best way. Late-night architecture discussions, whiteboard debates, engineers arguing passionately over caching strategies. The kind of environment where ambition wasn't a performance. It was a shared language. Most evenings, I grabbed drinks or dinner with coworkers, not because I was trying to network, but because, for the first time, I genuinely enjoyed being part of a team where people were building something meaningful. That's why, when we all decided to meet at a sleek downtown bar one Thursday night, I didn't think twice. We were at a high-top table, laughing about a bug that had taken 3 senior engineers and a prayer to fix when the air shifted. You know that sudden awareness you get when someone enters a room you used to love? That tightening in your chest like your subconscious recognized a storm cloud before your eyes did? I felt that first. Then I looked toward the entrance, and there he was. Grant, He walked in with a group of friends, smiling at something someone said, but his smile faltered the second he saw me. It wasn't dramatic, just a small, unmistakable flicker. Recognition, surprise. Then something else, something uneasy. My coworkers noticed the shift in my posture and followed my gaze. "X?" one of them whispered. "Yeah," I murmured. "Want us to stay?" I appreciated that more than they knew, but I shook my head. "I'll be fine." Grant hesitated across the room, shoulders squared like he was preparing for some emotional battle. Then, after a deep breath, he walked over. "Hi," he said. "Hi. Can we talk privately?" My team exchanged glances. I nodded once, and they politely drifted toward the bar. Outside, the spring air was crisp. A car horn honked somewhere down the street. The city hummed with life, indifferent to whatever this was about to be. Grant stood there wringing his hands, a gesture I'd rarely seen from him. He used to be so sure of himself, so certain. "I've been wanting to talk to you for a while," he said finally. I didn't know how to approach it. "That's okay," I said. My voice sounded calm, even to my own ears. He swallowed. "I made a mistake, Naomi, a huge one." I didn't respond, just waited. "When you got laid off, I freaked out. I didn't realize you had a plan. I didn't know you already had something lined up." My jaw tightened, not from anger, but from the familiar weight of being misunderstood. "I told you I was interviewing," I said quietly. He flinched. "Yeah, but I thought you meant someday, not a principal role at a top company." "That's the thing, Grant," I said. "You didn't believe me. You decided your version of the truth was more accurate than mine." He looked away, ashamed. I know that now." A beat passed. "I should have trusted you," he said. "I should have supported you instead of walking out." I exhaled slowly. It would have been easy to let bitterness speak. But I already lived through that chapter. I didn't need to reread it. "You didn't walk out because I got laid off," I said. "You walked out because you needed me to fit a certain image, and when I didn't, you left." He blinked at that, as if realizing something for the first time. "I want another chance," he said softly. "I miss us." I looked at him then, really looked. He wasn't the villain of my story. He wasn't evil or cruel. He was just a man who needed the world to move in a straight line, who panicked when life zigzagged. But I was no longer willing to shrink myself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. "I don't," I said. The word landed gently, but it was final. "Why not?" Grant whispered, voice cracking a little. "Because when things got hard, you didn't stay," I said. "You didn't ask questions. You didn't try to understand me. You evaluated me like a risk factor and walked away." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," I said, still calm. "And I don't blame you, truly. But I can't build anything with someone whose support disappears the moment the future isn't shiny." He looked as though he'd been punched. But I wasn't attacking him. I was just naming what had already happened. "You can learn from this," I said softly. "Just not with me." He nodded once, then again, and just before he turned away, he whispered, "I'm sorry." "I know," I said, and that was that. I went back inside, joined my coworkers, and let the night carry on. June arrived. Summer sunlight spilled over everything, including my career. My team was hitting every milestone. Leadership kept pulling me into rooms I never imagined being invited to. I was actually excited to go to work every morning. Then I heard through a mutual friend that Grant was seeing someone new, moving fast, talking about the future. "Good for him," I said, and I meant it. A month later, I heard they'd broken up. The reason? Apparently, she didn't think he was financially stable enough for long-term plans. The irony wasn't lost on me, but instead of schadenfreude, I felt detached amusement. People gravitate toward the lessons they need. He was learning his. I was learning mine. By mid-June, my manager called me into a meeting. "We're creating a new director-level role," she said. "Architecture and infrastructure. We want you for it." I stared at her, stunned. "That's a huge jump." "You've earned it," she said. "You've accomplished more in 3 months than some people do in a year. We trust your vision." The promotion came with another substantial raise. I now made more than 4 times what I'd earned at the job from which I'd been laid off. The job Grant had considered proof of my lack of ambition. When I posted a brief professional announcement on LinkedIn, the comments poured in. Congratulations, praise, support. Not from Grant, of course, he was blocked. But even if he hadn't been, I wouldn't have needed anything from him. By October, 7 months after the breakup, something beautiful happened. I bought a house. A modern 3-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood with big windows and sunlight that poured into every corner. It had a perfect office space, bright, spacious, mine. The kind of house Grant had once used as a symbol of how I wasn't moving fast enough. I moved in with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Around the same time, I started casually dating someone new. Someone kind, steady, funny, in a quiet way. Someone who didn't measure my worth in promotions or titles. Someone who didn't need me to be impressive to believe I was valuable. We were taking things slow. I liked that. One night, after unpacking the last moving box, I sat in my new office with the window cracked open. The autumn breeze carried in the smell of leaves and distant chimneys. The house was warm, safe, stable, and entirely mine. A thought drifted through my mind, uninvited but gentle. He wasn't wrong. We did grow apart. He just got the timeline wrong. He thought I had no ambition when I was at my most ambitious. He called me scared when I was making the most strategic moves of my life. He evaluated me by the storm I was walking through, not the woman I was becoming on the other side. But the truth was simple. I didn't need someone who stays when the outcome is impressive. I needed someone who stays when the outcome is uncertain. And now, I finally knew the difference. I closed my laptop, leaned back in my chair, and smiled to myself. A quiet, certain smile that didn't need to prove anything to anyone. Not anymore.